DHG here. I'm going to be doing my review for Batman Arkham Knight. Now, this is the shining example of what a developer can do when they get their head around what they want to do and they set out and they freaking do it. This game is great. The only games I've rated great so far are Resident Evil 2, which I haven't released yet, Elden Ring, and this would be the third. And that's reserved for games that I think everyone should play. It doesn't matter what genres you like. It doesn't matter if you normally play shooters or racers or RPGs or JRPGs, which I can't stand. Guys that look like girls, not my thing. But great games, you need to play them. And so I'm going to start off with a little bit how I played it, since this relates to one of the first things I get into, which most people care to hear about the graphics first. I kind of shake my head when that's our biggest concern, because if the game plays like shit, it doesn't really matter if the graphics are good, because a polished turd is a polished turd. But anyway, here we go. These are my settings. I played this on PC. Now, I'm going to stop this for a second here, because PC was a bit of a tricky thing for this. When the game first came out in 2015, I played it on the PlayStation 4, but it was also on the Xbox One. Xbox One for a second. I was thinking 360. But the PC version was kind of like Cyberpunk 2077, where it came out, it got thrashed, and rightfully so, because I understand it didn't play for a lot of people, period. The developer, Rocksteady, and I think perhaps Steam, the Steam version got refunded altogether. It was a big debacle. But here I am, it's 2022. I'm not playing this on Steam though, I'm playing it on GOG. GOG is run by the same people that make The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2077, CD Projekt Red, based out of Poland, which alerted the fraud department of my credit card when I bought something. I highly recommend GOG, especially if you're playing older games, like Fallout 3. They have the only working version of Fallout 3 that I know of. But here are my settings, and it played without a hitch. I'll get to all that later. And so I'm going to start with the first things first, graphics.
Make it waffles with a side of bacon. Don't tell my wife.
As you can see, the graphics are very good. Faces look very realistic. Even some of the stuff in the background here, like the cups, this wire netting, very realistic looking, especially for a game that came out in 2016. Now this is using Unreal Engine 3. Later iterations of that are out now, like Unreal 4, and I believe Unreal 5 is in development. The lighting in this game is just ridiculously good. Now, it doesn't have ray tracing or anything.
It took just 24 hours for us to lose control of the city.
There we go. I don't know exactly what to call this, but pay attention to this area. You'll see a flaring of the lights.
For us to lose control of the city.
Right there.
Tonight.
That does that a lot when the camera gets set at sort of obtuse angles, and you see it with what might be like your periphery vision. It's just a lighting effect that this game uses to maximum effect. It's very good. And you can see as you're driving around in the Batmobile, the street looks very realistic. When you run into things, obviously, there's damage represented. Like when you run into buildings, I might run into one here. I'm not too good at driving, especially in the beginning areas. Particle effects, you can see, are superb. Yeah, but if you veer off into the sides and you hit traffic or you hit some of the shit that's off, except for the solid buildings like that, you just go right through them. It's very neat. I wasn't expecting them to add that when I first played this. I thought that's pretty good attention to detail. Particle effects everywhere. All the animations are fluid and smooth. Even when let's see if I can get to a part here where I jump off the building and go straight into the Batmobile. No, not that. But anyway, if you're flying around, as long as you're over a street, you can hit a certain button either on your keyboard if for whatever reason you feel like playing this with mouse and keyboard. I'm not going to judge. But this game's meant to be used with a gamepad. You're gliding around like this. If you're over the street, you can go straight down into the vehicle, and it just looks flawless. They did a superb job with this game in every detail. I couldn't praise them enough for this. I'm really excited to see what they have in store when I think they're working on... It's another comic book game with DC. I don't remember the name now. I think it's Suicide Squad, but it's Rocksteady. They're going to be making it the only game they've been working on since this. So graphics are superb. Controls, there's a lot of complex controls in this. I mean, it goes very into detail. Let me get into one of the later videos. Sorry about that. I just got done working on my throat's a little hoarse. This is later on in the game during some of the side quests. Oh, but you can see here, grapnel boost. They take every ability you could possibly think of in the game and then add an oomph-teenth degree to it. They really max everything out. I'm going to see if they got a picture of the my skill tree at some point in here. I usually did the skill tree upgrades in between filming when I did some of the stuff that I didn't want to film, like the everything you do to get up the Deathstroke, the street lockdown, stuff like that. I don't remember what that video clip was. Here we go. I just saw it. Damn, my throat's killing me. Oh no, that's not the skill tree. That's just all the different gadgets you get. But even take a look at that. Now here you got your batarangs and all that stuff. These are just different weapons you get. Some of these you start out with, like the smoke, because that helps counter firearms. Damn. The disruptor you unlock later on. The explosive gel you get pretty early. But all this other stuff, it can all be upgraded. There's a massive skill tree in the game. But it's not laid out like other skill trees. I apologize for coughing so much, but my throat's killing me. Each one has their own set of controls. Like, they can all be fired from a combat stance by pressing the left trigger and hitting, let's say, A, X, I think Y. Y does the grapnel pull. And there's a bunch of different combinations. But other than that, the controls, you know, moving the camera around, getting used to the game, it can be complex, but it's all very smooth. Moving into gameplay here, because this goes into what I was saying. This game's basically a strike counter. It all builds off of that. It's a melee combat game with, you know, of course, a Batmobile that functions like a tank. But you get a lot of different enemy types thrown at you throughout the game. Like, you get some people that have shields, some people that have, I don't know what it is. The medics hit them with some sort of a shock device, and if they hit you, you can just lose your combo and any momentum you had at that point. But there's different ways to counter each and everything. So if they throw you into a combat engagement with a dude that's got a shield, a stun rod or cattle prod, whatever it is. Electric, they throw you heavy against you, and some dudes even have swords. You're going to have to mix up everything you've learned from the beginning of the game till the end. So if you put this game down and don't play it for like 4 or 5 weeks, and then you pick it up and try to play it, you're going to suck. It's got a lot of very complex controls, got a very high learning curve, but it's completely doable. It's not so over the top as some other games I've seen, like... I would have to say in terms of multiplayer games, stuff like Hell Let Loose, where there's just a lot they don't show you. They walk you all through it in here, so it's not that bad. Even though there's a lot to learn, it's pretty easy to get. The sound, very good. Everything was very convincing, especially crashing into stuff driving around a Batmobile. The voice acting is superb. This is something I think doesn't get enough credit. If the voice actors aren't any good, they're not going to be able to sell the game. They're going to really get into any game, I believe you have to suspend your disbelief and actually just let yourself get immersed by the game. If you've got bad voice acting, it's going to be like, really, you're going to try to sell this shit to me? But no, the voice acting is very good. Each and every character that is voiced throughout the game is very convincing. The dialogue is very good. There's nothing like Gears grunt-worthy, I would say. I thought of Gears, I thought about some of the Marxist sloganeering that they put in the game, and thanks a lot for putting that in there. Goddamn Marxists. To each to according to his own ability. Yeah, Karl Marx himself. Good job. Music. This was one of the best things in the game, and this was something that each and every Batman game had. Arkham Asylum had just a little jingle that dun 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 that you would hear in the background right before Joker was going to taunt you. It was something that it was different. It was unique to that game. In this, the atmospheric sound almost kind of reminded me of something that Bethesda would do, because, in my opinion, they're one of the leaders in creating an ambient music in the background that sometimes you don't really notice, but then the music kicks up, like when you're during a chase scene in here. And you can tell that they really went all out to have the best music possible. It doesn't matter whether you're doing the story sequences or you're doing a side quest to help open up the roads, because that's one of the side quests, open the roads or own the roads. Or you're chasing down the Riddler, which I did not do because it's a huge time sink. And I hate looking up guides, I just don't like doing it. I didn't want to go from spot to spot to spot, because the biggest thing I hated about the Riddler quests was finding the different trophies is the majority of the battle. Figuring out the puzzles isn't hard, it's just finding the damn things. The story. Wow. That's all I gotta say about the story. This has one of, because it's kind of hard to give an accurate critique of every single game I've ever played and try to pair them up against each other, but I would have to say that this has definitely got one of the best openings I have ever seen. Now, like I said, I played through this back in 2015 when it first came out, but playing through this again here in 2020, I thought, my god. I mean, the intro is about half an hour long, and it is fantastic. Every single moment of it. They didn't waste a scene. It sucks you in just like a movie does. I mean, if other developers could learn anything from what Rocksteady did here in this intro, it's that you need to maintain the narrative the whole time, suck that player in, and Rocksteady didn't spare any expense to do that. They did this in such a perfect fashion that this should be studied by video game developers. And the rest of the story, also very good as well. The only thing I had a problem with, and if you don't want to hear spoilers, then skip forward. But when you get later on in okay, here it is. I called it the Vagaries of Fear just because it didn't really work out like they expected it to. But here you're playing as the Joker, and the whole premise behind this is during some of the previous games, events happened and it led into the story that you're playing through right now. And he's infected with the Joker's blood. And according to the story, it's going to take over his mind, and then Batman is going to become the next Joker. But here you've got the Joker wandering through it's really Batman's mind, but it's a manifestation of everything the Joker sees himself. And eventually, here's stuff here. Joker's biggest fear was being forgotten by people. This is a defilement of his memory. Where's Harley? Nope, the other's Harley. There she is. She's got like I guess a commemoration of his life event, and no one's there. She's the only one there. So it's kind of like they're pissing on his grave. And then you get to this scene where Batman's everywhere. He was trying to take over Batman's mind, but then somehow, right there, it's supposed to show Batman taking control, and see, I don't really agree with the premise of how they worked it out with Batman taking control, but in terms of video game gameplay, they did it very good because they let you control every step of the way. And that's the most important thing when it comes to telling a story in a game, is you don't want to be watching the whole thing. I found that the most effective stories in games were told through the player's eyes, like BioShock, this. Cutscenes are good, but as much as I love Metal Gear Solid 4, it was way too heavy on cutscenes. And a lot of game developers learned from this, especially these guys. But this was the only part of the story that kind of made me shake my head a little bit. I thought they could have done a better job, but I don't have any answers as to how, so I'm just going to accept it. I don't have any better ideas, so this was fine, but that was the only thing kind of made me go, Other than that, the story will have you going from one part to the next. You're probably not going to want to put the game down, but you will because it's long. The stability and bugs. I had one crash playing on the PC version. Playing on the PS4 version in 2015, I don't really remember. But I remember having some problems with stability. Bugs. Every now and then some thugs would fall into some pretty funny places, but I'm not going to really write that off as a negative because it generally made me laugh. So it's fairly stable. I've only had one crash, and the game's got autosaves at good points, so even if it does crash, whoop-de-doo. Opinions. Okay. I'm just curious on what Rocksteady's working on right now, because it seems like a lot of the stuff they touch turns to gold. Now, that doesn't last, obviously. Look at BioWare. But I don't really have any opinions with this game. It was a great Batman game. It's a piece of video game art, and I think it's a great game that everyone should play, and that's my review of Batman Arkham Knight. Play it.